What's up? What's up? I'm Alex, and this is Superhero Hub. And today we have an interesting topic to talk about. So right now I've been working on a lot of stuff for the MCU Rewatch. Is what I've been doing a lot of lately. And in the midst of all of this, a lot has been going on in the superhero realm, news-wise. There's been a lot of back and forth with whether Spider-Man is or is not in the MCU, and as of now, it is confirmed that Spider-Man is not in the MCU, and most people take that as a bad thing. But what I want to talk about today is the pros, the cons, and the things to think about that comes from this deal, because it's not all bad. There are some things that you can think about that may take Spider-Man in a better direction than he had in the MCU, and I know it's crazy to think about, but I've been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of research on different things, and looking at some different reports, and so I'm going to talk about what we're going to get out of this and what we're going to lose from this, and then some things that are going to stay the same. So let's start with the things to think about before we get into. No, you know what? Let's start with the losses, because I can do the thing. Yeah, let's start with the losses. So the biggest thing that we're going to lose from this whole thing, and it's not even confirmed that we're going to lose him, but I'm pretty positive we are, is Kevin Feige as the producer of the films. As you know, Kevin Feige has been he's been the producer on almost all of the MCU films, and he's built an empire there where every movie is like quality. So and the whole reason that this deal kind of broke out is because Kevin Feige has a lot on his plate lately with all the new Fox stuff coming into Disney. So he's gonna have to deal with all of those new rebooting that and the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, all that. So he doesn't really have time to work on a property that's not Disney's property, because they're making less money off the movies than they would if they were to make a movie off of something they'd had the property for. So they wanted Sony to make it worth their while, even though they already had were getting a lot of money from it, but they just didn't feel like that was enough. So it's probably pretty safe to say that Kevin Feige is out, at least in the way that we know him. He may work in small bits on the projects. But odds are that he's not going to be a lead producer on this film. So another thing we're going to lose, obviously, is his connection to the MCU, which means we're also going to lose a lot of stuff with his character and supporting characters. So I'll delve deeper into that now. So with him not being connected to the MCU, that means that all the Iron Man stuff and influence stuff is gone. And when I say gone, it doesn't mean that it won't still be part of his character in the Sony universe, but they won't ever be able to mention it again. So there won't be any more talks about Tony Stark, any more talks about how his relationship, no more emotional linkage between Tony Stark and Spider-Man. That's pretty much going to be cut off. This includes characters like Happy won't be in any of the Sony movies. Happy Hogan's gonna they're gonna have to find out a way to take him out of that. Nick Fury out of that. Also, the backgrounds behind some of the villains they're going to have to take out of that, like Mysterio and Vulture. They're both pretty much Tony Stark villains that are just put on Spider-Man. And so what I think they're going to do in Sony is just kind of keep those characters, and just ignore their background, which is going to leave some patchy things. I think they're just going to not mention why Mysterio is upset. Like, I'll just say that they've kind of ended their quarrel with Tony Stark and are now upset with Peter, and so not mentioning what the past has been for them in the MCU movies. So yeah, Happy's gonna be gone. A lot of the other characters that are MCU related are gonna be gone. So that's one thing that I'm really not looking forward to, is seeing a lot of those characters leave. But in the end, I'll talk about why that can also be a good thing. So yeah, he's going to lose that big connection to this huge universe, this huge MCU, and he's not going to be really part of what's going on over there. Another thing is the suits. That's another thing that links him to the MCU, and I'm not really too positive on how this is going to work. I know he's probably not going to be able to use the Iron Spider suit. That's probably off the board. But the question is, will he still be able to use the other suits that Iron Man helped him make, or that he made with Iron Man's technology, like the the new suit from Far From Home, or the suit from Homecoming that he used also in Far From Home, but the classic blue and red, because those are some really cool looking suits, and I would hate to see them not being used in the future Spider-Man iterations. But they might just, I'll talk about why there's another thing they can do in Sony if they want to remake a suit or just tweak it a little bit to make it look, he made a new suit that looks a lot like the one from the MCU. I'm not sure how that would, if that would drop any problems or anything like that. But so yeah, I'm a little sad to see the suits leave if that is a real thing. Like, I know the Iron Spider suit's probably definitely out of there, which I am most definitely okay with. Did not like the Iron Spider suit. I still think it should have been like a one scene thing. I did not really like seeing it for most of the movie. It was a cool idea, but in the end, I like his classic suits and the black and red suit way better. So yeah, those are the big losses that I see coming out of this deal, and there's a lot more probably that I'm not talking about, but those are the main ones that I feel we're losing from that. And if you would like to talk about some more in the comments, feel free to do that. But now I'm going to talk about what we are gaining from this deal. One thing that I think we are gaining, and this is subjective, is Spider-Man being in his own grounded movie. Like, as in the Avengers movies and all that, he's more of a supporting character. He's just part of the big MCU. He's just one character in it. But when Sony takes him back, that is their most profitable character. So they're going to put him at the front of all of their operations when it comes to these Spider-Man movies or any kind of Sony Marvel verse that they do. Spider-Man's going to be at the very front of it, which is going to be great. And I think that Spider-Man works best as a solo hero and not part of a big MCU or a big like team thing. Like, I love the original Tobey Maguire movies more than the new Spider-Man movies. I love Spider-Man Far From Home. Didn't think Homecoming was all that great, but Tom Holland's a great actor. He does pretty good with the character. My favorite Spider-Man iteration is Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, and that iteration is him as a solo character, where he's the only character in that only superhero in that universe, and he's just it's focusing mainly on that story instead of using him as more of a supporting character or a connected thing. It's just Spider-Man, and I really like that. And Sony also made the original Spider-Man trilogy, so that gives me hope that Sony can do Spider-Man right. So another thing is they're going to be less dependent on Tony Stark, which is part of the big MCU thing. Like, I like Tony Stark. I love Tony Stark as a character. But I feel like they replaced Uncle Ben in these movies with Tony Stark. I did not like that. I think that Spider-Man works best when his motivations are, more rooted in the way the comics wrote him, more rooted in the Uncle Ben stuff, which I hope they delve deeper on in these Sony movies. Even though we've already seen Uncle Ben, that whole story, they can do something different with it. I'm not saying that they need to have an Uncle Ben thing. I just think that his emotions shouldn't really pull from Tony Stark. That just seems so MCU and not really Spider-Man. And they're just trying to make him just like all the other characters. And I just want this. I want Spider-Man, because he's such a big character. He should really have his own thing, his own vibe, his own feel. Like, that should be something different. I don't think that Tony Stark should be his big mentor, his big all that stuff. I just don't see where that was really necessary, and I did not like the way they did that in the films. Another thing that's really cool that we can gain from this is seeing Spider-Man in this new Venom, which is called a lot of people call it the Venomverse, but seeing Spider-Man go against Carnage and go against Venom and be in those movies is something really cool, because we haven't seen Venom since we haven't seen Spider-Man Venom Glass since Spider-Man 3, which most people do not like. But yeah, you can see Carnage and Venom and Spider-Man all together in one universe, along with some other characters. So I really think that's since Sony owns a lot of these these Spider-Man villains, they can do a lot more with them, and Venom can cross. It doesn't have to cross over to the MCU, because I don't think that was ever going to happen. I don't think Venom was ever going to be able to cross over into the MCU. So it's cool now to see that we will get to see Spider-Man and Venom meet, which is like, that's one of his biggest villains is Venom. So I'm really excited to see that. And they have basically unlimited access to Spider-Man villains. Instead of limiting it, they can choose any Spider-Man villain they want that they have access to, and they have an access to a lot of Spider-Man villains. So it's more unlimited, more accessible. They can do a lot more in that area. And with that, with the Carnage and with the Venom, I feel like Spider-Man can be more part of a rated R universe. There's a lot can be a lot more rated R movies. Now, don't confuse what I'm saying with saying that they are going to make a rated R Spider-Man, because that's probably not going to happen. But now that there's no hopes of Venom really being a part of the MCU, they can make Venom rated R, and they can make the Venom and Carnage thing rated R, or just whatever. However they do that, they can make it rated R because they're not trying to fit Venom into a scenario where he will be in the MCU, which is why they didn't make the first one rated R. They took out so much of it because they were hoping that eventually Venom would become part of the MCU, but now that's not going to happen, so they can go in with their original plans in making this movie rated R. Not Spider-Man, but the Spider-Man character. This is other Spider-Man, other characters that are connected to Spider-Man. So yeah, another thing is another thing that is like really cool to me, and this is not a confirmed thing. This is just something that's been reported on the internet about a lot, and that is Nova replacing Spider-Man in the MCU. So a lot of stuff we've been talking about just the past few minutes is what Sony's going to do with Spider-Man, but we're also going to gain something in the Marvel end, according to reports. They want to make Nova, since they don't have Spider-Man, they're going to make Nova the new teenage superhero, and the new guy to basically replace Spider-Man, and they're hoping to use the same director they use for Far From Home if Sony doesn't use him for their new Spider-Man movie. So either way, we kind of get something. I think that he could work on either of the films, and both films would do great with whatever. So I think that Nova would be a really interesting addition into the MCU. I'd be really excited to see him. Sucks that we have to see Spider-Man go to do that, but I mean, I'm not gonna complain about getting Nova because Nova's such a cool character. And then the last thing that I had on here was just the freedom that they have with Spider-Man, which I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier. But yeah, they have so much more freedom because they have access to all these stories, all the villains, all this other stuff without having these licensing issues. They can do whatever Spider-Man story they want as long as it does not connect to what they've already had in the MCU. Actually, there are more stuff here. I forgot. Another thing is that Sony has in the past wanted to do a Sinister Six movie. They've been pushing that. That's basically Sony's version of, well, not really the version, but it's Sony's big team that they can use, and it's a villain team. And they want to connect Spider-Man to that, obviously. And I think that now that since they want to do that so much, that we have a higher likelihood of getting a Sinister Six movie than we did with it being in the MCU, because the MCU is more focused on the wider, the bigger picture instead of these characters, these smaller characters. So I think that a Sinister Six movie is more likely to happen in a universe where Spider-Man is with Sony, and also Spider-Man is going to be making, he's going to be having a part in Morbius and all these other Sony movies that are going to be coming out. He's going to really be able to come in there and make his presence and really make a universe based around Spider-Man. Another thing that is really interesting that's come out since this whole thing's been going down is that Sony has announced 5 to 6 Spider-Man shows, Spider-Man universe shows that they're going to be making. So now that they're not with the MCU, that is, they can do that. And also they can make the shows however mature they want. So if they want to make some of them like more rated R, it doesn't matter. They can do whatever they want because it's their character. So yeah, they're not Spider-Man shows, but they're Spider-Man universe shows. So there might be shows to different Spider-Man related characters like Black Cat, etc. Like all those characters. And then the last thing I kind of talked about whenever we were talking about the losses, Spider-Man might have a really cool new suit because they might not be able to use the suits that they had from the past MCU movies. And while I love those suits and those are some of the coolest suits I've seen, I think that they could, maybe upgrade them or even like just tweak little things about them. So we might not be gaining, it might be kind of the same, but like we'll see a new iteration of the suit, I'm pretty sure. So that's all the things for the gains and losses. So here's some things to think about that, you know, whenever you go to judge this deal. Kevin Feige helped with, you know, as we know, Kevin Feige has helped with all the MCU movies pretty much. He also helped with, but what most people don't know is he also helped with the Amazing Spider-Man movies, which most people think are the worst Spider-Man movies of all the Spider-Man movies. He's helped with pretty much every single Spider-Man movie that's come out, including Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. But, you know, he also worked with Amazing Spider-Man as well. So it's not all like he's done some really great things, but you know, losing Kevin Feige isn't just the main thing that's going to make a movie like good or bad. There's other stuff that goes into it. Another thing to consider is that Sony made the Tobey Maguire movies, which I think I mentioned earlier. So I'm pretty confident that Sony can do a good Spider-Man movie if given the right team. Because you know, like I said, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies are some of the best movies that I've seen. Some of my favorite movies of all time. And those were Sony. Those weren't Disney. Those were just Sony and their team. Yeah, they made Amazing Spider-Man movies as well, which didn't do as well. But you know, you win some, you lose some. I mean, the MCU's made some pretty some movies that most people don't like as well. Like most people don't like Thor: The Dark World or Iron Man 3, those kind of movies. So it's like there's some hits and misses with any studio. And you know, Sony also made one of the best Spider-Man movies that most people view as the best Spider-Man movie, Into the Spider-Verse. So that was a Sony thing. Yeah, I know a lot of people argue that's animated, but it's still Sony, and it's still that same group of that same, you know, the same big corporation. Like there's things that they can make that are going to be great. There's things that they can make that aren't going to be so great. So it just really depends on the teams that they choose and what they decide to do with the movies. Okay, I had some more stuff on here. Oh yeah, most of the team from the movies, the SpiderMan Homecoming and SpiderMan Far From Home, most of that team are coming back to work at Sony with their Spider-Man. So we will see a lot of the same characters, or a lot of the same people working on it. So the movie won't really have that big of a shift in quality or tone or anything like that. It'll be the same basis, like the same type, it'll be the same type of film, the same, you know, general vibe, and it'll be the continuous story of what they were trying to do with the film. So they still have in their mind where they were going with the films, and they're still going to be able to live that out. They're just going to take out a few aspects of it. So, you know, like one of those people that's returning is the main character, Tom Holland as Spider-Man, which most people really love, and a lot of people think is the definitive Spider-Man. I think Tobey Maguire is, but that's just me. So yeah, Tom Holland's still returning, and there's talks that the director will also be returning for this movie, along with the script writers and all that. So the movie's gonna be basically the same that what you used to. You're not gonna get that much of a change. A lot of people might not even realize that this movie has changed from MCU to a Sony movie. That's what I hope. And then, you know, the last thing that I want to put, the last input thing that I want to say is that they said that Spider-Man's not in the MCU for now. This does not mean that Spider-Man will not rejoin the MCU at a later date. Right? The reasoning that they gave, like I mentioned earlier, for Spider-Man not being in the MCU right now is because Kevin Feige has a lot on his plate, and they're trying to make it worth the while to work on this movie on top of all the other movies. But once Kevin Feige is finished with all the work that he needs to do with X-Men and implementing all these new characters, they might have time to do something to do more Spider-Man stuff. And in that case, they might come to another deal, or, you know, we'll see what happens from there. Also, if this Spider-Man movie, if this Spider-Man movie does not do well, if this new Spider-Man, you know, flops, and you know, we all don't want that, but if it does, then, you know, Sony might decide to sell their not their company, but certain rights, or that character rights, or they might just decide to become part of join with another company. They might buy them out or something like that. And I don't think that Disney will be able to buy them out because I don't think the government will allow that because they'll have a monopoly. But I think that I know that if they do end up selling Sony or something happens where they anything like that happens, Marvel and Disney get the rights to Spider-Man by default. The new company that takes over Sony does not get the Spider-Man stuff. All of that goes back to Disney. Without Disney really being, they have a monopoly, they still get it by default because it was their original character. So if it does flop, then we still can see that Spider-Man will be back in the MCU one way or another. Thank you for watching this video, guys. I know it's been a really long one. I apologize. I was just trying to get everything out on the open. I hope you guys find this video helpful. So yeah, just leave a comment, subscribe, leave a like, please. I need a lot support here. I'm still kind of starting out, but to all you that have watched, thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time.